How's it going, everyone? Eulier Gonzalez again, but this time looking at the React and Typescript as a way to now understand and to make sense how not only how can we include Typescript in React, which is something that I have experience with, or actually instead of moving to the browser and see what is the error that it throws, look at this look at the code hints in your visual your text editor without need to jump out of that, and by doing some by following the code hints and doing some code introspections, that's what a lot of the time is the best way to find your path for. So as a way to understand the need of using TypeScript, especially if you're going to build now your applications, and these applications or this user interface will contain is now states, and you need to know the shape of that state, and especially because JavaScript is a dynamic language, which means that you can now change the variable values at runtime, something that other language like Java doesn't allow you to do that. Uh, and the point of this is to now, and according to the TypeScript, I think I got this. And according to Axel Rausenmayer, thanks to that, shout out to you, totally. Uh, in this JavaScript tackling TypeScript, upgrading from JavaScript, is that not only see what is TypeScript as a way to now what is the superset of JavaScript, and also what is the benefit of using TypeScript, as well as its downside, and TypeScript myth is most likely that, well, it not only tell the intent of this code, or it's not only give you this self-documented code, but also is provides the intentions that the author of such code, or even you, wants to do, as well as in the context of React, which or this visual text editor, we can now actually is have a lot of the things, such as the auto completion features, which is great, which improves the developer experience, and also is the ability to now work with large code bases. And when you put all of these guardrails, you can indicate to other developers that how your code can be used, and also to prevent some errors at runtime by only running by throwing this error at build time or development time. And now how Axel, all right, not only mentioned that, uh, uh, but also mentioning is also the downside of this, because it adds a layer of abstractions and more complexity and more things to learn, etc., etc. It also introduces a compilation step when writing your code, which is now as a way to actually prevent all of this bugs in runtime. You need this compilation time. npm package can be used if they have a static type. So for example, if you're not having a static type, you must use or create that using the definitely type, which is now how you can actually is, for example, use all of these different types. uh, Even though from jQuery you already have that, you have to look at the guides, the directory, which will give you is all of this library that you can go with. Okay. uh, and also getting static type right is occasionally difficult, and I think this is the hardest part of TypeScript, is that you must understand not only the JavaScript language as well, but also is this superset of JavaScript. And my recommendation here is to keep it is to keep things uh, is to keep things as simple as possible. For example, don't overdo genetics and type variables. So something that, as we take a look at that, for example, genetics, which is this way of how you can now generate or this fabrics of types, pretty much like functions are fabrics of values, and genetics are fabrics or types, and type variables. uh, but yeah, and also the TypeScript designer tends to replace JavaScript with C Sharp or JavaScript. And according to Axel, that is because there are better alternatives, for example, like Dart, but they don't want the JavaScript team or the TypeScript team actually like the JavaScript, so they want to make it possible. They want to make it statically as possible, and to work with JavaScript as much as possible. So many new TypeScript features are driven by that desire, that they don't want to make it possible. They do want to make it possible to statically type as much JavaScript code as possible. So if you have a lot of these new features that the language from the ECMAScript actually provide to you, now you will know is that a lot of the TypeScript teams actually wants to provide as many statically typed as possible in JavaScript code, uh, instead of actually replace them. You know, is a TypeScript team likes JavaScript and doesn't want to replace it with something better. So TypeScript is not meant to be a replacement of JavaScript. In fact, it's a way to actually make, for example, Dart. Even though that Dart hasn't paid your UI to life, even though that Dart is now a language made by Google and the kind of things, and they invest ton of money. Uh, exactly, and they actually look at this comparison here. They are not. Okay. So TypeScript is not according to Axel, is not a replacement for JavaScript. In fact, is to make uh, as is to make it possible to statically type as much JavaScript code as possible. So the TLDR of this is that don't overuse or don't overcomplicate things in TypeScript. Okay, so because of that, we also look at the fundamentals or the essential in TypeScript, which is getting started with TypeScript. First is the project structure, okay, which to me that was quite interesting as a way of how you can take a look now a typical TypeScript structure project. You have now the distribution, you have now the source or the TS, the TypeScript. The main, which will contain, is the entry points, utility functions, followed by the test, as well as the TypeScript configuration, which is where you're going to indicate the configuration of the compiler. And most of the time, this is a basic configuration here. This is, hey, what will be is the root directory that I'm going to take a look. Sometimes this is the source instead of TS. What is the output directory, which is after you compile the TypeScript code. What we want you to generate is this JavaScript code and put it in this folder, as well as what is the model resolutions that you are going to work with. Okay, so it can be CommonJS or either ECMA's EX6 model, which is much more convenient. And then programming TypeScript via an integrated development environment. The idea, one of the benefits of using this, especially with Visual Studio Code, is that Now Visual Studio Code uh, provide us is two independent way of how we can use TypeScript, because one of them is the language servers, which is now a server that actually highlight or the highlight or the text and allows to refactor and autocomplete error per component or per file. And the way that actually do that is by running the server, this language server, and they communicate with the client over the JSON RPC. This is remote procedure call. And I think this is quite interesting because this is something that when you initialize your Visual Studio Code and you take a look now at the or when you open up a TypeScript files, behind the scenes, now Visual Studio Code has a server and a client. The client is the open file that you are doing, and the server is the way, or the server is now providing you all of this ability and benefits as a way to detect errors and refactoring and provide some auto completion features. So this communication is using JSON RPC, and this is only guaranteed per file. But when you want to actually guarantee that the correctness of your applications with TypeScript, we actually run that. We actually run is the TypeScript in watch mode. So any file with change actually is going to detect that, which I find out very, very compelling and interesting. And also, we can is just run a command like tsc compile as a way to actually run or by running this component or by running this command, which is something that you're going to use a lot of the time, especially when you're going to deploy your code to development. Is that, and the other file produced by TypeScript is the main, the definition files, the source map file. In TypeScript, it's often not delivered via TS but via JavaScript files, and the TS files. And in order to use npm package from TypeScript, we need type information. Exactly. In order to use npm package from TypeScript, we need TypeScript information. The npm registry is a huge repository of JavaScript code. If you want to use JavaScript package from TypeScript, we need to type information for it. Using the TypeScript compiler for plain JavaScript files. Again, this is now passing is the basic configurations to the compiler. The TypeScript compiler can also process plain JavaScript files like allow.jsx, check.jsx. We can use the GSDoc as a way to document, for example, JavaScript functions like this, and that kind of thing. But this is now how TypeScript works. Okay. Trying out TypeScript, the TypeScript playground, which is something that they can provide you at that particularly here as a way to actually see how you can now work with TypeScript. And also is the TypeScript node, like so. So you use the npm ts to run the rel without installing anything, which is this. So far so good. We're actually quite familiar with this. When was the last time it was updated? 8 months ago. Holy moly. Oh, they're using this SWC. Exactly. Compatibility to use this. It is used by tools like Next, Parcel, and Dino. This is Speedy Web Compiler and Speedy Web Compiler. It's an extensible Rocks-based platform for the next generation. You can even target that. You can even target that. This makes it an order of magnitude faster than vanilla transpile only. To use it first, install the core and the wasp, because after all, this is now this platform is an extensible Rust-based platform for the next generation of fast development tools. Fast development tools. It is used tools like Next.js, Parcel, and Dino, as well as companies like Vercel, ByteDance, Tencent, Shopify, and more. SWC can be used for both compilation and bundling, and which is essential here, especially if you're going to build now this big application with Typescript. You need to make that compilation times fast as possible, as well as the bundling, ready for production. So it's a Rust-based platform for the web. As a way to improve is the compilation and bundle time. For compilation, it takes JavaScript or TypeScript file using modern JavaScript features and output valid code that is supported by all major browsers. So this is quite interesting. So this compilation step is using Rust behind the scenes. Okay, instead of actually using its JavaScript, so it can harness the full power of Rust. This language that can take advantage of the multi-threading, they can harness the full power of the entire CPU threads. Okay, makes sense. Makes totally sense. So as you can see here, this is now this compiler, okay, in Node, okay, is used by 4.7 million packets, god damn, and only 100 contributors are actually helping this. So in any case, the whole point of this is to be able to describe that. So Typescript, as well as how Typescript works, and how you can try out Typescript notation using this book, like dynamic and assertion, test assertion, and type assertions. Okay. Inferred type is just a comment in normal Typescript and describe the type of type inferred for the following line. Inferred type number. Okay. And then the essentials. And how important is to recap the essentials as a way to understand and make sense how do we get here. And I think this is quite useful, often overlooked, especially the more senior you are in a particular field, because you assume that a lot of people actually must know that. It's like, we don't need to talk about that. But in my case, I prefer to actually talk about that, not only for myself, but also for the audience right now that actually is perhaps don't know too much about Typescript, as a way to understand that. And on the essentials here is that by looking now at this gibberish code, how can we make sense of all of this? All right, and remember that even though that it might be look like cryptic, you want to know is that how this code works behind the scenes. Okay, how this code behaves without having to read a long English description here. So here we look at specifying the comprehensiveness of type checking, especially when you use the strict mode. It's a no implicit any, no implicit this, and no implicit any is that Typescript can infer a type, and we must specify it. This is mainly applied to parameter or functions and methods. With this setting, we must annotate them. Knowing this is most likely to functions and methods. No implicit this. Complain if the type of this isn't clear. Always strict. Use JavaScript strict mode whenever it's possible. A JavaScript strict mode uh, is that a strict mode isn't just a subset. It intentionally has different semantics from normal code. So browsers not supporting strict mode will run strict mode code with different behavior from browsers. That's so they don't rely on strict mode without feature testing for support the relevant aspect. Strict mode makes several changes to normal JavaScript semantics. Eliminate some JavaScript silent errors by changing them to throw and errors. Fix mistakes that make it difficult for JavaScript engines to perform optimization. Strict mode can code sometimes make strict mode code can sometimes make to run faster than identical code that is not strict, and prohibit some syntax likely to be defined in future versions of ECMAScript. Again, the strict mode, sometimes you will see the default non-strict mode referred as sloppy mode, and this is the official term, but be aware of this case. The whole point of this is to now improve or fix mistakes that make it difficult for JavaScript engines to perform optimizations. And the other is that eliminates some JavaScript silent errors as that. So with use strict, okay, it will now throw you errors, especially when converting mistake into errors, assigning to undeclined variables. So for example here, failing, it doesn't change the behavior. It just makes some several changes to normal JavaScript. So it's eliminate some JavaScript silent errors by changing them and throwing errors. Fix mistakes that make it difficult to JavaScript engines to perform optimizations, and prohibit some syntax to be defined in the future version. So again, the TLDR of this is that it now improves the developer experience by actually throw errors that before were silent, and also improve the optimizations JavaScript engines by fix those problems. So the TLDR is that improve optimizations in JavaScript, so make or fix some errors in improve JavaScript optimizations engine, as well as throw now errors instead of silent them. Strict node checks, strict function types, strict property initialization. Okay, we'll see more compiler options later in this blog, but for now is this. And now actually understand what is a type in Typescript. So far we got is 8 types, which is undefined, null, symbol, objects, numbers, boolean, strings, and big int. Okay, and all of these are dynamic, which means that you can use them at runtime. So it is helpful here. Typescript brings an additional layer to JavaScript, which is a static type. And again, it's helpful to think here as the 2 layer of the language. You have now the dynamic layer, which is when you put now the values in your code, and the static, when you now put the type of your code. So try to develop an awareness of the 2 language level here. That's what it is. So you have now here is a JavaScript when you assign the value, okay, which is the dynamic language, like dynamic level, and the static level when you put this annotation for them. So we look at type alias, type arrays. I think this is something very, very important, especially how now array plays in JavaScript according to Axel. Okay, you have is a less, or a tuple, and the subtle difference between a list is now all of these elements must be the same, but their length is the length varies. Unlike tuple, all of these different elements can have different types, but their size is the same, or the length is fixed. Okay, and also in terms of function types, okay, as a way of how you can now is pass or to define is the argument of the types as well as the output of that function. The functions declarations, how you do is the optional parameters, which is something useful sometimes, and the rest parameters. That remember that you can also use this, the rest parameter, parameter handling, as the rest parameter. Yes, the rest parameter. Spreading into function call is this one. The spread parameter or the rest parameter. You got the rest parameter, which is applied to is functions. They collect arguments into an array, and the spread arguments, so are used when calling functions or method. They turn iterable objects into arguments. So this is now exactly they turn a iterable object into objects. So here is now you are spreading this, and the rest is using for functions. They turn iterable objects into arguments, into values. Okay, so in this particular case, which is on function, which is rest parameter, okay, they collect arguments into an array. Here you are collecting arguments into an array. You're condensing them, right? And if you're gonna define them as an iterable, okay, you use the spread operator to transform is iterable objects into arguments. And then you have the union types as a way to now make some more type checks about that. How you can use now the null or the union type followed by option versus default value versus undefined. Parameter is optional. Parameter has a default value, and parameter has a union type. And how then objects in JavaScript plays two roles. You have records and dictionary. And this distinction is something useful as a way to now develop a sense of what you're gonna do as you write this kind of application. So records are objects that are objects whose property names are known, but their values, but the types are different. Okay, so for example, a record is a fixed. Okay, a record is a fixed number of property that are known at development, and each one of them can have different values. Okay, or different type. Whereas dictionary is an arbitrary number of properties. It's not a fixed property. It's not a fixed number of properties. It's an arbitrary property whose names are not known in development, but their types are the same. And all property have the same type. Why this is important? Especially when you want to know is as a way to type these records, okay? You know exactly the number of property that this object will contain, but each property will have a different or can have a different types. But with dictionaries, um, it's pretty much like you having a word that can have several meanings. Okay, so in other words, is this fixed? Is this yeah? Is an arbitrary number of properties. Okay, yeah, it's an arbitrary number of property whose values yeah it's an arbitrary number of properties uh, that whose names are not known in development, but but all property have the same data type. So you have in the dictionary, this is known as you have all of these different words that have a relationship with each other. Okay, synonymous. Why this is important? Because especially as you want to now create more complex data structures, or you want to transform some data structure, you know, that is quite helpful to do this. But again, in other words, make it easy for you to work with the data structure. You know, make it very, very, very easy to work with that data structure. So keep it simple. Keep it simple. Uh, and then the type variables and genetic. Okay, so because type variables and genetics. So remember the two lines of or the two level of the language. You have now the dynamic nature, which is when you add the values, and the static nature, which is when you add the types. Okay. And now, since value exists at dynamic level and type exists at a static level, normal function exists at the dynamic levels and are factory for values and have parameters representing those values. So parameters are declared between parentheses. So similarly to that, similarly to functions that are at dynamic, okay, they want us to see is the relationship between normal function and genetic types. So normal function exists at dynamic level and are factory for values and are factory for values and have the parameters representing values. And parameters are declared between parentheses. Whereas in genetic types, which exist at static levels and are factory for types and have parameters representing types. And those parameters are declared between angle brackets. So this is something important here, because now you are going to see is the genetic type pretty much like function type, or genetic type pretty much like normal functions, but where now functions are factories for values. Okay, where now functions are factory for values and have parameter representing values, and the way you and the parameters are declared between parentheses. Here with genetic types, they exist at static levels and are factory for types and have parentheses and have parameter representing those values. And the parameters are defined using the angle brackets. This relationship is something interesting, because anytime you're going to generate a genetic, or when you need to describe what is a genetic, well, a genetic is a fabric or is a factory of types that exists at a static level. And this definition, the way of how you can express that, is something very, very, very important. Oh my God, it is. Naming type parameters. In Typescript, it is common to use a single uppercase characters such as T, I, and O for a type parameter. However, any legal JavaScript identifier is allowed and longer names often make codes easy to understand. But this is naming type parameters. This is a type parameter. So on that, and as you can see, for example, is that makes a lot of sense. And what you can see, for example, is the React code, the TypeScript React code. You can see that how they actually is using is genetic as factory for function type that they only exist at a static level, and they represent and have parameters representing types. So pretty much like functions, when they have parameters representing values at dynamic that only exist at the dynamic level, and these functions are factory of values, factory for values. So parameters are declared between parentheses in functions, and parameters are declared between angle brackets here. So this relationship here is something that allows now is to understand is what is this, for example. As you can see here, we are looking at a genetic, is a factory for types that exists only at static, static, at a static level. All right, where now their parameters, representing types, and they are defined using the angle brackets. So where their parameters, and the total difference between a parameter and an argument is that argument is the value and parameter is the name, is the label here. So this genetic here are factory function. That makes a lot of sense. So these genetic here are factory of types that exist at a static level, and they represent, and their parameters represent is the type, and they are defined using angle brackets. So this is the type variable here that is going to be used inside of this. Okay, so instead of us having to describe what is the type of all of this using plain old English or plain English, we have now this particular conventions to do that. So here what we're saying is that now this array is the shape of element. Okay, all of this, so this array will contain is this shape. You also have is now different methods here, like again, this is an object in JavaScript. So you have now private data that you can have access. You also have is now push, pop, and get method, like so. This is a getter here. So instead of actually is having call this as a function, we're gonna get that as a property. And then you got is this two now functions. You have the push, you have the pop, which is great. Okay. And here you're going to now declare is the function types here. Again, here you're gonna pass this. This is not a genetic. This is just a type variable. All right. You're going to add that. Similar to this, you want this to actually get that element. And what you want to know is the length. It actually is return you this. And you're going to inherit that. The other is example with maps. And maps are types genetic in TypeScript, for example. So when we want to create now a map like this, okay, and that's one of the reasons why working with object in JavaScript is sometimes much more beneficial rather than defining a map. And again, I know that the thing here is to make it simple as much as possible with Typescript. Okay, make it simple with types. Yeah. Make it simple with types, and this is something that they mentioned. That it mentioned here in type assertion. No, in the essential here. It's like make it simple, my friend. Wait, what? Typescript myth. You got it. Nope. I think it's in type annotations here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's this one. I think it's this. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is quite interesting. Where did I read that? Hmm. Hmm. Well, in any case, uh, the maximum setting is activated by this, and we also gain the full benefit of static typing checking. Okay. Well, but the point of this is that don't overdo. Don't overdo. Let's see if I see overdo. That's quite pretty fucked up, man. Exact. Okay, it's this. Getting a static type is occasionally difficult. My recommendation here is to keep things as simple as possible. For example, don't overdo genetics and type variables. If you want to generate is now a okay. Don't overdo genetics and type variables. This factory of types. Don't overdo factory of types and type variables. Mm-hmm. But in any case, okay. So now that we look at this essential here, and we truly understand what genetic is a factory of types at static level, where you define is the parameter types inside of a angle brackets. Okay. So we also look at this like so. Mm-hmm. and maps are Typescript generally. I type generally in Typescript, boolean or string. You can do this. Function definition can introduce types variables like this. So once we look at that, and now it is time to see how you can define your components in Typescript, in React. Okay. Why you don't? Okay, much better. By just putting is the TSX. Of course, you need to install this Typescript. You just put the TSX. We also look at how can we now type in components in React components, as well as typing components children's. Okay, and how by navigating through the code you're going to see that, especially when you are working with React, how now the define is all of the different types, and how you can use, especially by passing these children's, you can use is instead of using the children's, you can use the specific type that they provide to you. You know what I mean? So we also look at the type component states here as a way of how you can do that. The things to know is avoid race condition when trigger multiple event. Use snippets that allow you to set quickly hooks, and setters accept function, which is great for testing. Setter accept function, which is a great thing for testers. Then we look now at the typing component state exercise, which is here. We actually did that, so far so good. There is nothing too fancy there. Okay, so for example, the components, we look at how can we fix that, and by adding this type. Okay, and the instructions here, which in our particular case was not that hard. All right, and then we're going to take a look now at the typing component state exercise, which is
interact, and this a lot of times happens with like a set.
Which is the thing here is that it's going to inherit that. Oh. Do that. No. Just going to reload that. No. Okay. What in the F, my friend? Okay. There you got it. Oh, okay.
So we've got all of that in place. I can't set it to anything where the input field bites me. Cool. And doing this because it's a chore and I'm supposed to. But it's like, hey, you accidentally passed a string in here, and that's great. Like, yes, I wish that didn't happen. So Mark taught me about dot.
No, just the postfix. It's one property.
It's just value capital A.
What? And also, I believe you because autocomplete believes you. Right. Also, we learned that exists. Do we all know about this one, the as date? Mark said yes. I saw some other people didn't know, so. And now it is appeased with me, which is pretty great. draft count.
Yeah, he's
See.
explaining is
So
thing.
in the repository,
But now, in today's video, we're gonna take a look now at the API here on React APIs. Now, APIs here with React. Exactly, APIs, which is that of fetching API data, which is fetching API data. There is another section here, fetching API data exercise, which is fetching API data exercise. All right. The other is passing the state method to component. So passing state, passing what? Passing the state methods to components. Okay, so passing state methods to components. Not sure what do you mean by that. That is quite intriguing to me. So let's get into this. Okay, fetching API data. Come on, let's do it.
we're going to grab this inspirational quotes and we're going to take it for a spin because
Okay, this is now a different. Okay, this is now a different repo that we're gonna work. We are going to work with this repo. Okay, there you got it. Boom, bam. Okie dokie. Let me actually clone this. Go here and say, hey, please stop it. CD, go back here, and then you say, hey, git clone of this repo called inspirational quotes. Okay, let me actually open this repo in a new terminal right now. There you got it. Okay, and here is API, components, libs. Follow me along to actually inspect this piece of code. Right, okie dokie. So is this. Can you see this? Oh no, you're actually looking at another different here, which is inspirational quotes. That's right. Okay, now you can see it. Okay, and here we got is now a normal React create app, right? It's using this strict mode, which means that the user is React 18. All right. You have also the Typescript configuration, as we looked early in this video. Some of the target, the lib that we are using here as a way to tell to this compiler, hey, I don't want you to complain about this. Allow GSX, skip lib check, ES model interoperator, which is great. So it allows us to work is with the import for importing common GS model. Allow synthetic default import. Allow import X from G when a model doesn't have a default export. Okay. Strict, which is something that we already mentioned that. What the strict actually means, you can actually take a look at this. Please open that. And here you go through and the strict flag enables a wide range of type checking behavior. The result is a stronger guarantee of program correctness. Turning this is equivalent to enable all of the strict mode family options, which are outlined below, which is strict bind call apply, strict function types, When enabled, this flag calls functions parameter to be checked more correctly. Okay. Strict function types, strict null checks, strict property initialization. Alright. So when set to true, Typescript will raise an error when a class property was declared but not set the constructor. Okay. That's a way to tell you, hey, you shouldn't initialize this for class, which is great. Use unknown in catch variable. That's interesting. Okay. All right. But this is all of the strict variables that you enable: initialization, strict null checks, function types, as well as strict bind call apply. All right. No implicit any as well. No implicit this. Use unknown in catch variables. Strict property initialize. Strict functions type. And always strict. All right. So we also have the force consistent casing in file names. No fall through casing switch. Model, which is what is the model? Specify which model code is generated. Model resolution, resolve JSON models, isolated models, no emit, GSX. Please provide this autocompletion for us. And I want you to now include any Typescript files defined inside of the source. So, which means is that in the index.tsx, where we are now importing inside our React application, we now it also makes sense of what it's doing behind the scenes, whether it's the React as well as the React DOM, the application as well, which is part of the component, and how we need is to, in this particular example, they're using is the environment as a way to call that, and based on that is running this server, which is a function here that to me is quite interesting. Is like global function. It's a global function that I don't know where that function came from. It came from the index. Yeah, but it's like okay, there you got it. It's from the API. Okay, makes sense. You're gonna call that, and here you are creating is a server, the environment that you need to pass, the serializer, fixtures, models, routes, and seeds, which is quite interesting. Quite interesting way of how you can create is a server for that, followed by the route. Okay, as a way to now have access to this, which is this.get quotes, which means the server this.get quotes. This is interesting because now you are creating a server from the metage. Okay, metage, yes. Okay, it's an API for mocking libraries. Interesting. Yeah, it's like not a lot of people actually use that, but okay, it's good for mocking stuff. So create a server. Now you're gonna define is the model, and the rest serializer, which is here root false embedded here. So essentially here we are creating is now our server, mock server here, with quotes. How do we want it to actually represent this, or how can we reply when the server detect a quote? Route here, limit offsets, Okay, followed by the this.get, quotes random, quotes ID, and all that kind of stuff. So far so good because we already know that. And then as a way to now mount, so when the server deploy this, or when we read our index HTML, which is must be here, which must include is the root element here, like so. And here we are now. Okay, so when we run this server in development mode, it will now run this. It will create now behind the scenes this server, okay, and then we're going to actually get that element, get the root elements, append that, okay, and then render our application inside of that element ID, which means is good. Now the main component that is rendered here is the application. So we got now our application here, which is using a React use effect, use a state, quotes, an inspirational quote. We actually have a loading component. If we can take a look at this, it's actually showing is this GSX to render this component. And on the application, we also have now our types of quote. The subtle difference between types and interface is that interface are used for public APIs when you want to let your consumers to extend the functionality, and types most of the time is used in your React components for your state or your props. Again, if a code base is using interface, go with interface, or is type, go with types. And here we are now fetching is randomly is by client side this, but it seems that we have somehow hard coded is the fetch method here, similar to this, like so. So we got now these two async functions. All right, and when this component is mounted, it's going to now define its state here, this data that is going to change allegedly, and then run your use effect, which is, hey, I want you to now run this site code after the commit phase, after the screen is updated, and call this fetch random quote dot then set quote, right? Because here we're using an effect, which is we having is a synchronization process. This is the setup function, and we also need to specify is our cleanup function. And because we are now loading is this data right now, okay. So if there is no quote here, please show the loading. Otherwise, now you're gonna show is the content that is inside of this. Okay. All right. So far so good. Let me actually take a look now at
the other thing. Turns out a lot of times in our UI apps, we always just don't have, like, we're not just making counters all the time, or even in-memory only to-do lists. Sometimes we have to talk to APIs. I know. It happens, right? We have to make network requests. So let's just talk about some of the pieces around that, and we'll also then talk about, like, what if we want to pass like set states through? We'll kind of use that as a slightly more sophisticated playground for getting a few more concepts in there. So go ahead and just pull that down, and you should be good to go. And I'll get set up as well, and then I'll see you in like a minute. So there's not a lot to see in this app yet because it is supposed to hit an API, and I have not dealt with that yet. So applications that are supposed to hit APIs and then don't do a lot of stuff yet, but we will. I do have the functionality to hit said APIs, right? We've got fetch a random quote and fetch quotes. just for those of you that are interested, this is using a library called Mirage.js, which like simulates an API server. So I don't have to worry about like core stuff later, but like it's also really great for testing. Or the hypothetical situation where you need to build a UI before the API is ready. That happens later, but like it's also really great for testing. Or the hypothetical situation where you need to build a UI before the API is ready. That.
So here we're using is Mirage. Here we are using a Mirage, a server for development, which is useful for testing or to develop the UI before the backend is ready, which is something that I don't recommend. Unless you already have that.
Happens to me.
That's what we use at Front Masters for development. And then the backend can just make it real.
So like right now, we have a problem, which is theoretically, we don't know what a quote is yet, right? And like this is an easy fix, but like this is where like let TypeScript handle everything for you. It's really good about that until it does not have enough information. That's usually the only times that you need to step in because you're like, yo, use state. It's like quote. Quote is undefined, right? And it thinks that it will forever be undefined. It's like, cool, you can only set, quote is undefined, you can only set quote to undefined. Not great. And then like, I think if I tried to use quote down here, it's like, we do catch it. It's like, it is a constant of undefined. You almost always get a loading situation here. So what we need to do is figure out like if we tried to like take the solution that we had before, like if I look at the quote type, I can see it has, an ID, content, and a source. Really, I need the content and the source to make this work. And so like one solution, and honestly, depending on your use case, which is not a terrible solution, which would be to like give it what I call like an empty value in this case. And then like maybe you have a skeleton loader and you get the right shape of everything. Like if you can pull it off with whatever you're working on, like this does have some problems, which is now like this won't work because like technically this is an object that exists. Also, it's like this is not prepared to have an ID because it's trying to guess it from the type. There's lots of like other edge cases. Let's talk about the more generic one where it's like the data might have, one of a few different shapes or more than you have, like more than you can just fake out in the very beginning, or to the point where it's not worth it. So in this case, we basically just need to say, kind of like when we used the question mark before, to say like this is either this value or it's undefined. We've seen this syntax, and this, if you've used TypeScript before, you've definitely seen it. But I made promises that if you hadn't used it, you should be able to.
What you are telling now is this is a genetic. Hey, this is a fabric. This is a factory of exactly. This is a factory of types.
Join with us. We can say basically pass it a generic or a type argument to what this should be. Like it is trying to guess, but in the event that it cannot guess correctly because it does not have enough information, we can basically say like, okay, this is a quote, or it's undefined. Right. So now it has figured it all out for us. Right. We just had to give it a little bit of a helping hand to get it all the way there, and this will theoretically work for us in this case. So now this.
But this is in this. Oh, okay. So in our application, .tsx file, since so one way of defining type is using genetic in our state. Remember, genetic types are genetic types only exist at static time, all right, or like static. Okay, you take a look now at the genetic. Okay, static level, right? So remember, the genetic types only exist at static level, and our factories static levels. Exactly. They only exist at static levels and are factories of types. You know what I mean? So are factories of types. Remember, the genetic types only exist at static levels and are factory of types, which parameters are defined, as I mentioned here, and have parameters represent exact factory of type, and have parameters representing types, which are defined using angle bracket. Okay, so unlike functions, which only exist at dynamic level, are factory of values and have parameters representing values. And this is something quite important. They only see the dynamic levels and are factories of value, have parameters representing values, which are defined using parentheses. Okay, parentheses. Exactly. Parentheses. Like this. Parentheses. All right. Okay. Parentheses. So far so good. So far so good. So one way to actually define that. Let me actually see how you can do that.
This one will fetch a quote when it finally runs, and you'll notice that like if I took this out, because it's commented out, and the JavaScript will still run if you don't have a compile error. So like it's why you saw just an empty screen if you just spun up the app, and the loading indicator didn't stay there forever, because like the JavaScript was running. It was just a TypeScript issue that we had at that point. But now it knows that it can be one or the other. We can actually pull this in. What's really cool about this that I kind of want to point out in this situation, which is up here, quote is quote or undefined, right? Let's just, I don't know, console log a quote, and then Mark can remind me to take it out. It's quote or undefined, right? Here we're saying, oh, it's quote or undefined. But if there's no quote, return. And not only does TypeScript like check the actual types in the type system, but it's also kind of like analyzing your code, right? And this is like a dead end. In the event that quote is undefined, right, it's falsy, we return. That means this code path stops here, right? This branch timeline like ends, right? It's been, what, pruned? Is that the term of art? And so like this, no, at this point forward, if quote exists at all, it can't be undefined anymore, right? So you no longer have to deal with the fact that it could be a quote or could be undefined, because the world in which it was undefined ended on line 29, right? You can just kind of move along, and it's like it has already analyzed your code, it has figured it out for you. So it's one of those things, if you find yourself doing all these extra checks, like you could hover over it. Like if I somebody put an if or like quote NN to make sure it exists, right? I can hover over and say like, was this code necessary, right? And get a sense of like, is this actually quote or undefined, or is it now definitely a quote because I've done something, right, to confirm it one way or the other. And this will come back to surprise us in a delightful way, unlike most technical surprises, which are not delightful when we work on action creators and like reducers later. But yeah, that is a nice thing to know as you kind of go through and work through all these things. But if you don't.
So now by putting this, for example, here on the application is, and say, hey, this is a genetic. This function or this hook is a genetic from the quote, we're telling is that we are now is generating is types from this. This is a factory of types that is only exists at static level, and they and have parameters representing types, and they are defined using is angle brackets. So far so good. That's quite interesting, because not only that, okay, we can say is, as you can see here, is say, hey, cannot find model reaction time. The declaration comes here. Loading is equal to any. One of the thing here is say is that GSX element implicit has type any because no interface GSX intrinsic element exists. Like so, if say, hey, I cannot like that. What if I tell now in this case, hey, would you like to update? Yes. These things live by the update, bro. Breaking change Docker machine. Okay. These changes add a confirmation prompts to GPF. The vault. Add conda. Alias plugins. Git. And add a mix with Tetchwax. Cat image. Colorize and Heroku alias. All the chains remove plugin for unsupported Docker machines and remove the deprecated valve as so on our rack. Okay. So in this particular case, if we get rid of this, if we uncomment this line here, one of the things here is telling us that, hey, I cannot find the model this is corresponding of that, and to me this is quite interesting because it's like, yes, it is. GSX elements implicitly has type any, and because no interface you're complaining because of this. Cannot find model React GSX runtimes of its corresponding declaration. Oh, it's because we haven't run this code. Which means that we haven't run is, of course. Of course. He's complaining because we haven't run is this is package JSON, right? So package JSON here. We're using is PNP, npm, alright. npm run npm install, and after that npm run star, or npm just star. Okay. So now he's going to find that model properly. Remember that after all, behind the scenes, especially if you are working with the what the hell exactly, the loading page is gonna load that. But as you can see, is now throwing is this couple error. But now those errors disappear. Remember that when you're working with Visual Studio Code, behind the scenes you have now is the language servers that help you to now with features like autocomplete, co-linting, and refactorings. Thanks to this server that is running behind the scene, LAN server, that communicate to your client, which is the open file here, and it provides you all of these features. But this is only per file. If you want to run this to your entire application, you must run is the TSX, whether it's in watch mode or to run the command in node. All right. So here are some issues here, like for example, quote is undefined but never used. Okay, all right. And also is inspirational quote is defined but never used. What's next? Search for keywords to learn more about each warning. To ignore at the assist next line. And also we got this. But again, this is just warning side here. But as you can see here now, Typescript is checking this. All right. Because, exactly. Because, no. Because our code. Because Typescript analyze our code. Analyze. Because Typescript analyze our code. We can now is provide that. Or we can say a union type, which is hey or undefined. So the thing here is that by actually passing is this. Exactly. By passing, because Typescript analyze our code, the React code, we can make sure that by the time our data, the quote, move to the return statement, we can guarantee that we get the proper data. Right? So far, so good.
Don't have a default value. You can say it could be this thing or undefined. You have lots of options. You just have to help TypeScript along the way. And sometimes, in return, TypeScript will help you. Right? It's a symbiotic relationship. So then the challenge I'm going to give to you is I don't want to show just one quote. I would like to show some number of quotes. Let's see. The fortune is false. If I put this part back in, we can see we get this fun form.
Okay. So now let's actually uncomment this. Okay. And see what are we rendering here. Will you? It seems like okay. Nice. Chill. Oh my God! What the? Man, stop being silly with me. That's right. All right. There you go. The difference between science and fuzzy object is that science requires reasoning, while those other subjects merely require scholarships. What? Oh, what do you mean? What's oh? Oh. Who the F are you, bro? Oh, writer. In California. Missouri. Holy moly, bro. Wait, what? Really, man? What? F? What the F, bro? Did you roll that S? What, nigga? For real? Is this book? Oh my god, Space Troops. Holy moly. What? God. Oh, nigga. I mean, this movie actually aged quite well. Quite well, you know, like, quite well. Holy moly, did you roll this? Jesus. Oh my god. In Spanish, it's invasión. Holy F, bro. What about the authors? Claudio Serrano, Casper Van Dien, Dina Meyer, Neil Patrick Harris. Oh, really? Oh my god, yeah, you were there. That douchebag face. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, you're good, man. Uh, mm, holy moly. Oh, yoga instructor? Well, no surprise. Oh, man. Marshall Bell? Ami Smart? And Rue McClanahan. Oh my god. Casper Van Dien. Son. In 2007. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh my god. Well, but there's no source. If there is no source, doesn't work for me. Star Trooper Marauder, a sequel of the original film. Oh my god. And what? There was two versions? Starship anyway. Anyway. No, it's okay. It's okay. Fine, fine. Anyway. So yeah. child help. Mm. But there is no the word to child. He joined the cast of the independent film Daughter. There is no abuse? Who the fuck? Okay, someone in the Spanish actually put that thing. Yeah, someone in the Spanish put that thing. It's like, okay. Mm. Okay, you also need to check that. In any case, Casper Van Dien, right? This is, oh my god, Casper Van Dien. Jesus. I think fair use.
Today we have suffered defeat. But I am confident that where there is defeat, we will make victory.
Do you have what it takes to be a citizen? The Federation needs you.
Me? Really?
Enlist now.
Yesterday, I dropped troopers into a combat zone.
Join up today.
How high you fly is up to you.
Oh my god.
Do your part.
Join the mobile infantry and see if you've got what it takes to be a citizen.
Johnny Rico.
Saddle up, troopers! Grenade!
Lola Beck.
Hold on!
Dix Hauser.
If the bugs find this place, they knock out the fleet.
Next stop, Earth.
There goes the neighborhood.
There's a long war ahead.
Incoming!
Bugs! And we need you now.
Kill him!
We're being tested. Our loyalty, our intelligence.
Get down! Here they come! You know what to do! Get in there and kill them all!
Starship Troopers 3, Marauder.
Let's go crack a planet.
It's a good day to die.
See you on the bounce, trooper.
Yeah, and it is quite
The Japanese are
because the entire U.S. culture has been mauled by war. You know, and especially those who live at the edge, at the empire, knows that. You know. All right, but in any case, you know, Judaism. But in any case, you know. Albuquerque. That's quite interesting. Yeah. Um, but oh my God, all of this was all of this was triggered by this quote. Anyway, any freaking way, bro. Keep moving.
Form on the number of quotes to load. And I want to remove this one because they're all going to show in here eventually, or we will put them in there. We can iterate through them. So the real UI I want is this fun form. I should load. Where I can specify a number of quotes that I want and hit the endpoint that pulls in that many quotes, right? And so this will be an array of quotes instead. So there'll be some differences in how this all plays out for us. But why don't you take it for a spin, and then we'll come back together and review some of the slightly variations on the theme that we get when we're dealing with an array versus just one value.
But what do you want, man?
OK. I should load. Where I can specify a number of quotes that I want and hit the endpoint.
Number of quotes to load.
Or we will put them in there. We can iterate through them. So the real UI I want is this fun form. I should load. Where I can specify a number of quotes that I want and hit the endpoint that pulls in that many quotes, right?
Okay. Okay. And then hit the endpoint for that. Okay, this is now the inverse. On submit, on change, and the count, and the exact. This is now as a way to how you can is now receive that. So on change, the number of quote to load, and on submit, like this. So on submit, you're gonna call this on change. Okay. Okay. So the whole point of this is to pass now the this is at the quote, but the other is the number of quotes, right? The number of quotes to load. Because this is something that is going to change, okay? So this is information is something that we're going to change. We're going to put this into a state by saying a use state here. Initially will be 0, all right? And then I want you to now get this tuple. This is how they call this. They call this tuple. Where you're gonna get is initially is the numbers of quotes or the count, followed by the updater function set count, and here we are now telling to React, hey, I want you to now is infer that type as a number. So you got a count and you got the set count. It say, hey, but I haven't used that. That's right. You're right. So now this component actually is a set is the count. So we want to keep sync the count with the count. Follow like this as the count. All right. And also we want this to now is pass the update function, or in this case is the setter. Okay, because this is the number of quotes to load. So anytime now this input change, I want you to now is update that, which is let's go to pass now this function here called function on change. Okay, that'll be is the handle, by the way. This case is handle change. All right, and I want you to now get this event, which must be is the input HTML which must be an input HTML. So anytime now we are running this function or this handler as calls as an iteration in this as calls as an interaction, the same interaction, aka onChange, we want is to well, update the count here with the event.target. Locally, unfortunately for us, it is called event. Okay, so event, that's one of the great things of using our Typescript that actually help us to autocomplete with this. It tells us that this is generic type input attributes requires one argument. We can use this or the React event handler, right? Where this React event handler, which must represent is that event, no, this doesn't represent that, which is the HTML, or in this case is input, the input event, which is exactly what we're going to handle here. Event dot current target, all right, dot event dot event dot current target dispatch event listener. That's quite interesting. Let me actually do something like this. Let me actually do this because I wanted you to pass this handle to the count. So on change, we are going to pass this handle a change. All right. The thing is that when we detect the onChange, here we're gonna run as the onChange. But the question is that what is the onChange is? So if we hover up on our change, locally for us it is this, which is React input attribute elements onChange, or is this React change event handler input element, or it can be undefined. So this locally for us is what we're going to use this now here. So if the event exists, all right, now I want you to now get me the event it's not this. React change event handler. Okay. React input HTML attributes, or is this? That's quite interesting. So perhaps is this one, right? So if the event exists, event target or current target. Oh, no. I get it. No. I get it. No. It's not this because it actually is pointing to that, you know. And the thing here is that I'm pointing is to the value that I'm gonna get from this input, right? Is the value that I'm gonna get from this input. is the value that I'm gonna get from this input. So we can start with something that is not right. You know, it's like we're saying, hey, because this will be any. Okay, we can start here by saying is initially, please give me is the props with children. Okay, I'm going to define now a type here called is quotes or quotes parents, and say this is now a prop with children with the genetic type of this. That of course will contain is children, but it's going to contain is this property count, which is now a number. Okay, followed by the on submit, where initially I don't know what is on submit. It is a function. Okay, not sure what kind of function it is should return. Okay, and the other is the onChange, right? But onChange, I'm not quite familiar of what this onChange must be. So I'm gonna put this as a function. And I don't know what is the type. So by doing and putting now this, okay, here now yeah, here now is like, okay, so you got this submit, which is a function, and onChange, right? But this onChange, which must be a function, I would like to know what this function will be, you know, and that's when things can become quite unnecessarily complicated. Is that what is the type of this function? What is this function return? You know, well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But I know that the event must be something like an HTML input element or some sort of event, like so. Event target. All right. Here, of course, you say, hey, this is not assignable to this. And as you can see here, because we are doing this code hints, so by following the code hints and do some code introspections, a lot of the time that's the best way to find your path for, which is now change event handler of this, which means that this is a change event handler that we need to import. I don't know where. Import from React change event handler. That makes a lot of sense. All right, and now we can easily go back to. Of course, you're gonna complain a lot of this, like, hey, onChange is not assignable to type event handlers HTML input. Change event handler HTML input. Oh, or we can do something like this. Yeah, something like this. All right, it's not complaining about that. Okay. We can also is exactly now here you are complaining and say, hey, this event in fact is a chain event handler, but this actually comes from React like this. All right, and if the event exists, or in this case it's more like this. This function must be something like this. Change event handler. Change event handler. So this event is one of the things. It's an event of change event. Okay, if we take a look now, if we do some code analysis here, type check event, which is a type that it takes an event handler of the change event, because this is now a genetic of the change event. Okay, so it means that the input here, okay, since this is now represents an array of the event, the change event here, which is this, is a change event of the input HTML of the what? Of the HTML input element. Of the HTML input element. So it means that it comes from this. No problem. So now, as you can see here, it actually says the current target, the value is this. But it says expect an assignment to this. As you see this set, so now this is the value that we expect to get this set time, or in this case set count, and we want this to now pass this value, which will be is now a number, but it tells us that, hey, is this actually a value as number? There you got it. Holy moly. Of course, now it's complaining about the property here that we're sending, where it says that, but this is now inside of the quote. When it says it expect, for example, user stays undefined but never used. Okay. And the other is on submit. On submit, for example, here. You can take a look now. This is a change event, form event, HTML form. So if we now actually replace the on submit with this, and we import that from React, and we double check that here as a way to say, hey, this is now input element. No, this is not. Actually, this is not fulfill the this actually doesn't fulfill that. And as the current target on submit, we want us to call is the value. We wanted to pass is the value, or no, in this case we wanted to pass is this, the unchanged. Exactly, but because this is not a form event, this in fact is the event that we're receiving is this for event HTML element. We can say current target argument of form event HTML is not assignable to parameter. Change event HTML. Type of property target are incompatible. So this must be is like what? Change event. But of course, he's going to complain about it because it's an argument of the type form event HTML element is not assignable to a parameter of this. Type of property target are incompatible. The event target is not assignable to the type event target and input element. The event target is missing the following properties from type input. So, how can we fix this? Because after all, we need to also is pass the handle change. Oh, unless we say something like this. So on submit, okay, the function that we're gonna pass on submit or handle submit here, which is an event that we're gonna receive here. We don't know which event is that, but we know for sure that we need to pass that as well as the handler, which is handle submit. Okay, it say that this must be is type event any is not assignable to form event HTML form. All right, which means is that you expect an event, but we don't know what event is this. And it's telling us that on submit here is, we can actually get rid of this for a moment, right? We can actually get rid of this and find a way to say, hey, on submit does not exist. You can do this and on submit. You're gonna now is call or pass is this, right? Which is the on submit. So on submit say, hey, this is not what I expected. You're passing me is this signature, you're passing me is this key, but that doesn't actually open up the key lock, or that's not a proper signature. In fact, it's form event handler this. And now that makes a lot of sense. Okay, form event handler, which is something that we must import, I think, from React. That's right. And last but not least, we are now able is to handle this event. So now this event, where here it doesn't know what it is, but it is a form event handler of the form event, okay, is a form event handler from the HTML form element like this, which of course this must be import from the React form events. And now we can actually is handle the submit, where in handling the submit is by performing our HTTP post request, which is locally for us is now handling event, handling submit is now this, which is we're going is to receive the event. We can also receive the event, and from there we're gonna get the data that we need to. All right, which is the event dot prevent default initially, so I don't want you to refresh the page, and then actually target that. And then actually target that. Or the current target. But in this case is the, I'm not sure how to actually get a particular element here, because this is very narrow specific to, yeah, this is very narrow specific to that. To forms, by the way. Yeah, to forms, by the way, because after all we want is to actually get that data from this, and since this is an event emitted from that, how can I get is, okay, let's take a look at the form event here. Extend from synthetic events. But I'm not sure why is that, especially for form or for form event. In MDM, exactly, couple event on submit. And then trigger on change here, which is called this function handle change. And then you're going to now do is this response here, for example, to fetch quotes, right? Here we're handling is this logic here, like so. All right, we can say it's async and put now this function and a wait for this, which means that async async function, and here you're gonna await for that, which is behind the scenes. You are now stop the execution of that function context, or the function stop the function execution. You get now the fetch quotes here, okay, and once you get that data, which is with the data that we're gonna pass with the count here, and once you get that data, all right, I want you to now update the quote. So I want you to now update is the quote. Well, by saying is quotes, which is defining is the quotes as a way to now represent this data that we want, that is going to change regularly. This list of quotes, set quotes, okay, and also use a state that is an array of quotes. All right, an array. Yep, an array of quotes, like so. And yeah, an array of quotes. And then once you get this data, okay, which is quotes, is going to return that. Once we get this data, I want you to now is update our state with quote. And well, actually render this elements here. Let me actually render is quotes here as a map. I'm not sure if quote exists. If quotes exactly, if quote doesn't exist, or quotes does not exist. All right, okay, since after all this is an array of quotes, set quotes, set quotes, like that. Since now after that we're going to render is this collection of elements here as quote, that'll be now is using GSX as a way to represent this quote like so. All right, which is okay. I don't know what quote has, but it seems that quote contains the ID. All right. Followed by the quote by content, as well as the source, but because we need to actually render all of these elements here, like that, into a child component, like so. All right, but because of this, we need to also put is a key for that. We shouldn't use the key provided by the array. In fact, we use the data that come from the database, which is ID, as a way to identify this. And this supposed to work. Holy moly. Okay. Exactly. So then we're going to say, I would like you to show is this. So if quote, using this GSX syntax as a way to say, hey, I want you to now show is this. Okay. We need to show is this segment quote unless it exists. If that exists, quote, if that exists, all right, then you want to show this thing as it is. I think I missed something here, which is this one, and then you got it. This is one of the powerful things of this. You know, you can actually say, hey, why did you not put 3 or 2 or 4 or 5? Actually, it's updating properly. Then you hit here as a way to load the quote, and then it's going to load all of the quote as expected. So far, so freaking good. It is quite simple. Again, it is quite simple, and I think we should supposed to actually, in fact, okay. Okay, but as you can see here, this is something powerful, because as we do this, as we follow the code here and we do this code introspection, we were able to figuring out what we need to do here and how to fix these Typescript problems. And I know that a lot of people actually, even though that we add a lot of state here, okay, as a way to now actually, well, update the counts and then pass on counting here. I think this was a very interesting exercise to do as a way to see how you can now make React Typescript work with React. Okay, so by putting at practice the concept of the Typescript and the React as a way for cover a specific use case, which is data fetching. Holy moly, bro. Holy moly. Holy moly, bro. Jesus freaking Christ. Let's actually look at how he did this.
Right, and so this will be an array of quotes instead. So there'll be some differences versus, for careful eagle eyes, there's a button for loading the quotes. So I don't need this use effect anymore. Goodbye, use effect. Nothing I like more than saying goodbye to use effect. Also, very important technical change. There we go. And this is no longer valid. Now, one of the nice things that I can do with the collections, put an array. That works, right? Like, yeah, I'm setting you up. It works in JavaScript. It doesn't. Like, well, that one I'm getting yelled at because the quote doesn't exist anymore. And I'm not using it. But like, if I tried to use it, and I tried to use anything on it, right? So if I said like quotes.map, and then I will grab the individual quote. And I definitely shouldn't have deleted that code earlier that had that, but we'll rewrite it. And we'll say return inspirational quote, and I gotta add the key anyway. Quote.id, and you can see where this is gonna start falling apart on me immediately. It's like, yo, you ain't got no ID on a quote. You're like, I absolutely do. I saw the type. And it's like, I don't. So let's just put the rest of the content. And that is filling in the props because it knows what the props of inspirational quote the component are. So again, I don't, if there's one reason beyond all of the safety and the good and the bugs you won't have is not having to remember what props you gave a component, particularly when you're live coding, but also in your normal day-to-day life, is worth it. Like, for every work project, I use TypeScript. But even when I'm like working on a course that's only JavaScript, I will write the app in TypeScript first. Like, that is the person I have become over the last like 4 years, is I will write in TypeScript first, and then I will simplify it to JavaScript afterwards, right? Because it is that much, the benefits are that worth it to me. Cool. I will write the app in TypeScript. For every work project, I use TypeScript. But even when I'm like working on a course that's only JavaScript, I will write the app in TypeScript first. Like, that is the person I have become over the last like 4 years, is I will write in TypeScript first, and then I will simplify it to JavaScript afterwards, right? Because it is that much, the benefits are that worth it to me. Cool. So I'm getting yelled at, and if I hover over, I can see why. Quotes is this type is an array of never, right? Which again, when I start a heavy metal band, will be our first album. You can, I'll get a SoundCloud between now and then. An array of never, and because it's like, yo, you gave me an array. That's it. I don't know anything else about this array. And so never is like any has like two like siblings that are both, they seem scarier than.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting. So in fact, it's actually doing is this. And by putting is this key here as the quote.id, all right, and of course you get rid of that inspiration. That we don't need to use an effect, which is a synchronization process, okay, which is great. We don't need to actually show the quote here, and we simplify a little bit and we say, hey, but what is quote? And I'm telling you that is actually quotes. And I don't want to show is this, by the way. I want you to show is this particular thing. And when I say, hey, put me 3, load them, and it's going to render that quite amazing. Quite good, because we're using is this grid, blah blah blah, that kind of thing.
Any, but our ultimate own, which is almost always right. And so it's looking at this array and goes like, if there was stuff in this array, it would be like, it's an array of those things. It's an empty array, so it's an array of nothingness. It's an array of never. So the easiest way to handle that is exactly how we handled it before. And so we can basically say, this is an array of quote. There is a version of me, if anyone finds like possibly even my current code base in the open source part, where I used to make pluralized versions of every type that were the array of that type. I no longer do that. The one character just wasn't worth it. So quote, and we say that that is an array type. There is a version of me, if anyone finds like possibly even my current code base in the open source part, where I used to make pluralized versions of every type that were the array of that type. I no longer do that. The one character just wasn't worth it. So quote, and we say that that is an array. And now, even though there's no quotes in it, it knows it's the right thing. I'm no longer being yelled at. Right? I just had to help TypeScript along the way, and then in exchange, TypeScript helped me, and it now knows that like it has these properties, so on and so forth, right? And like it all compiles, as you can see down there. I do need to like fetch these quotes at some point, but like that's a later me problem, because I have a new problem that I have to deal with for reasons that are mostly a setup to have to explain something to you. You'll notice that the button is not in this component. It's in this quotes plural component that I have to go into, right? And there we have. Or on submit, or we can have it on submit, but there we have the full form in which I can load quotes. So I have the age-old problem in React, which is I have to pass down everything I need from the parent component to the child component.
This is known
right?
as the inverse data
And there are a bunch
flow.
of ways that I could do this. I could like wrap set quotes in a function and pass it down, but like I could just pass set quotes down through as well, and that's or I could theoretically it takes an on submit. I have multiple ways that I could deal with this. The tricky part, like not really the tricky part, what figuring out is like what is this type. And there are a bunch of ways to do this. One, like there's nothing wrong with stealing this type. This looks somewhat like confusing, but again, like I said before, use state is a wrapper over use reducer. And so it's just dispatching a very simple object, which is whatever the new state is, and updating that accordingly. So I can have all that in place, and then I can pass that down if I need to, or anything that happens along the way, and set that all up, right? And so, for instance, I could pass down the direct value. I'm going to pass in that onSubmit handler that we saw before. I can just go and say, so the count should be, we need to store the count to figure out how many to get. Now, that could happen in either component. We'll pass down the onSubmit. Oh, but I need the count too, right? Like that's interesting, as if he says that with some amount of surprise. Right, so I could pass down the whole set quotes, or I could figure out one way or the other. I can either lift my state up and have counts in that higher level component, right, which will now trigger re-render of everything whenever like that count changes, because now every parent then re-renders all of its children, right? So like that's a great for state management, and yeah, I'm not worried about performance in this application, but like what if I needed to actually pass through, like I could also pass down set quotes too. And then we get the challenge figuring out how to type this. right? And so we'll pass this through. And so what type? Oh, this is currently an any, right, on purpose, to show you that like nothing got yelled at as soon as I did that, right? Like it's like, yo, you're passing random props in, anything you want, one any anywhere, and like now all of these, guess what? Any, everything is now an any, even if we could guess what it was. Yeah.
Why do they have any if it's something you shouldn't even use?
So I mean, if you pull in a JavaScript library, right, and it doesn't have types, you need something, right? You need the concept of an any.
Just for us.
Yeah.
While we're working through it.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like it is a situation because JavaScript happens to predate TypeScript, right? That you could run into, and so I think it's really great for migrating. But I would say that like once there are even ESLint plugins. Like in our code base, we have an ESLint plugin.
Yeah, what is the use of any? It is good for migrating your application. In my experience,
and you can't even use any if you wanted to, right? To make sure that like because like anything it touches, like even if you had a function that took, it's like, yo, I only take a number, right? You can pass an any in there. And guess what that value is now? Guess what the return value is now too? It's an any. Like everything an any touches turns everything else along the way into an any, which is not great. So we'll say type quotes props. And well, we know we don't need to put the children in there, right? This is like pulling it's like I'll do both ways. We'll do this route first. I'll show you if I needed to pass in the other thing. Form event handler.
And also, I discovered this by actually randomly putting the type, let the TypeScript yell at me, "Oh, stupid, what you doing?" And then, all right, what is your suggestion? Then do this code introspection, and then figuring out that, oh, actually this is a signature. This change event handler is a signature for this type of functions. Similar for this type of unsubmit function.
Like I said, like
event handler.
I am so happy I don't have to do this all from memory. And if you're stressed out looking at like how does he know all these things, I don't. You see, I'm literally using the autocomplete and the IntelliSense to help me here. And then children, we know that we have an answer for that as well. So if I just did quotes props, right? It's like, yo, what about children? And I could add it in there as a React node, but as we saw before, I can do
exactly.
Cool. And now let's see. Save that all we got. Doesn't know what event is here, or on changes, right? Because that's wrong. But like that caught the bug. I remember when I was like going through this before, I was like, oh, that's wrong. I'm like, yeah, and I would like to be notified about it. You have to believe me that I did that on purpose. I did. Cool. And so that passes in. I immediately found that little bug that would have bitten me at some point or another. Like, I've been like, yo, there is no on change, and you called it as a function. I would have found it at runtime. And then we wanted to say, at this point, we are passing in count. And we'll do both ways. Default count to 10. And so you can see, like, as I do this refactor, I will know when I am good because my sidebar and the red squigglies will tell me. So it's like count needs to be a number in this case. And then I don't really care about on change, right? I don't really have anything for that. So we're going to make that optional in a second as we pull everything together. And so here we'll say that set count, or set fetch the quotes. That takes a number, right? And so this refactoring becomes super easy as I go through, and then we'll set quotes. You can still make little mistakes, especially if you're talking in coding. And like, I roughly get that everything is going to work as expected. Yeah, I was about to say my onChange should yell at me. OnChange is missing the type, and so like I don't need that per se. And if it feels like I am like reinventing parts of HTML, that's a good feeling. We'll talk about that. So we'll save that, and everything compiles. Right? Let's verify. Cool. Other than some markup changes, I think I have a double. I can get rid of that piece that I left in there from earlier, and everything works. I did say that pulling count out does cause re-renders. Like I said, at this point, I would probably keep it normally because the performance, like, it's not worth the added headache. But let's talk about what this would look like if I wanted to pass set quotes through instead. So instead of onSubmit, we're going to give it just the like set quotes function. And again, this is a refactor that I will know is finished when the red squigglies stop. So then we can push count, the countdown. Countdown. Count, need use state. Oh, no duplicates. Cool, cool, cool. We're not using that anymore. We're not even doing these two. What we want is to be able to pass through set count. But what is it? I mean set quotes rather. How many times do we make them? It's a function, but like, what's its signature?
Start typing and it'll tell you.
Well, the problem is like, for when you're defining the arguments, it doesn't have the. But like, what's its signature?
Start typing.
Start typing and it'll tell you.
Well, the problem is like, for when you're defining the arguments, it doesn't have the information yet. It's like, yo, these are the things I'm ready for. It can't like reverse engineer like, and to be clear, like, I await a future version of TypeScript. Be like, yeah, I can. Right? I saw you use it somewhere else, and this is the one time you gave it something. Like, I'm sure that like I can't wait for that comment to be out of date. But presently, it's true. And so if we look, it is this function which likely takes an array of quotes and returns void, and I could hard code that myself, and like that is what I did for years. Right? But that's actually like then if I change it to something else and I refactor, it's like my reinventing the wheel did not serve me. But what I could say is like this is a very valid type. I can literally just grab this.
And then put it down here because XLL is that. So this is now a generic function called dispatch that is the type of this function set state actions, which now contains this quote. And then you say, what is the
this is what kind of function it should be.
Quotes? Wait, let me actually import.
And that, let's save everything in this case, and now we just say did we pull that in? Yep. And we set the quotes. Oh, we didn't define it here. Cool. And now that all works. Let's see. Where else am I getting yelled at? Oh, we took that off. That's fine.
You need to pass a statement.
Let's actually define that. We'll say, now I get to use that new thing again. Check it out.
Value as number.
It's like I didn't have to go see. Like there's errors and I have not looked at them yet. Cool. Pass that through. That no longer takes account, so get rid of that. Or does it? Awesome. No issues found. Everything is good. Big reveal.
Big reveal.
Yay, it works, right? And so like the refactoring help, and the other part is we brought in basically everything we've talked about so far, and then went for a little bonus run by passing down set count. Like I said, I would probably do it that first way, but I think it's useful to show, one, the active refactoring, and then two, if I needed the type for something that I didn't totally know. Like a lot of times, especially if I have the value already, I can like reverse engineer what that type should be. And there's actually ways, like there are some utility methods like called return type that you can literally hand it the type of a function and it will get you even the return values, or parameters that will get you the parameters, right? There's a whole bunch of ways that I use like throughout my code base to like figure out stuff based on other stuff. So it's not like here is the like set of types that I've carved in stone, everything must adhere to it. I can like.
And again, this is my way of actually doing this. Which is this is the big reveal. Okay. Notice that on the type we did some reverse engineering from typing roundly types, wait for TypeScript wait for TypeScript to come wait for TypeScript to yell at us and then once he's calm, find out why by looking at their hints and do some code introspection. And I think that's something quite interesting. In this example here, okay, the application.tsx. All right. So in this example here, we handle is now. Okay. So in this example here, we now follow is. In this example here, we follow is the recommendations from React.dev, from React docs, which to me is quite interesting.
Dynamically like figure out types based on actual properties and use cases that I'm using in my application. So we have that kind of all in place now, and it works. And like the refactoring becomes a lot easier. If I was doing that normally, I would have to switch back and forth between the browser, look at the next error. But like for me, a lot of times even hovering over some of the stuff, I could see the answer and get a sense of it incredibly easily. This still, like, I will show you why I would probably use like use reducer in this case, because it just becomes simpler. That is true of React and vanilla JavaScript, and it is also especially true because like then there's just one dispatch. It becomes very easy to pass around and use. They kind of like just to set the roadmap for us kind of going forward a little bit, which is cool. We've now seen how to deal with props. We've seen like how to deal with event handlers. We've seen how to deal with like state from use state. Kind of the next kind of like few hurdles. We've got to deal with asynchronous state. The next few hurdles for us are like, okay, how does this work with use reducer? What about the context API? Right, that's a thing that we all tend to use. We've seen how to deal with like state from use state. Kind of the next kind of like few hurdles. We've got to deal with asynchronous state. The next few hurdles for us are like, okay, how does this work with use reducer? What about the context API? Right, that's a thing that we all tend to use as well. And then we'll see, because the context API has some interesting problems with the time-space continuum. And then we will just look at like, hey, it seems like I'm taking a lot of stuff from the underlying elements, like a form, like an input, and retyping them myself. Like, could I just have some of that like goodness that you were just talking about, where we can like use some amount of like dynamic typing to figure stuff out?
All right. Okay. So, but that'll be all for this video. Take care. Bye-bye.